As I said earlier, when something happens in the thing, in one day, 20 cents a gallon, it goes up. And it seems like forever to come down 5 cents, and we're very happy about that. There's a very stable, and you can enter into Tish's company and a lot of the fueling companies, long-term contracts. They'll lock your prices in there where that consistent. And I think when he speaks, he may talk about how they go out and look for gas. I don't know if you still do it on a monthly basis, but also if you can, when you talk about the rebate program to get back from the federal on a quarterly thing that people don't even know about. And when I talk to municipalities that don't pay taxes and stuff like that, there's a lot of incentives out there right now, so we need to use them. So here's again this is 2012 numbers and different things like that, but again, if you look, that hasn't really jumped a whole lot. I mean, natural gas in our area, you saw in the video EQT at 176. 2 years later, they're at 189. 13 cents it went up in 2 years. How much is petroleum-based fuel went up in 2 years? Think about that. I mean, all three of our major stations in Pittsburgh are all under $2 a gallon. Amazed how smart fourth graders were. I mean, they're talking about NOx, and fourth grader talking about NOx. I mean, some of them didn't. I didn't know I could spell it. It is amazing because I started off with a picture of Beijing, and I showed 2 pictures that I had over there, and I said, "What do you?" I started off because I had maybe 65 or 85 kids there at this environmental, frick environmental school in Pittsburgh. Penn State asked me to go to. So I get in there and I said, "Oh, that's smoke, and there's a traffic jam." I said, "No, that's small." There is, because people don't listen. The oil companies now have China. China's consumption now is almost what are they, second now behind us now, and they're just finding out they can drive now. But they have that pollution problem. It looks like going into LA when you fly into LA. 50 miles out, they say you're getting ready to land, prepare you look out, you see this big cloud. That's pollution. It's over LA and the big cities. And they're having that problem now. Now you see them starting to shut down some factories and things like that in China to get really well. So it's also the health environment side of the house. And but I think the education. We welcome school to go out and speak to school districts. We really would love to have school districts come to our Odyssey Day because it is a community college environment. I'd love to. I mean, I could host events there to have as many we can come in because I think that's there. But you know how to get to these school districts really? PTAs. PTAs. You want to make sure they're going in school boards about anti-idling and stuff like that, because those buses sitting out. I mean, we have a state anti-idling, and nobody enforces it.
But I think also that the important thing for the school district administrators to understand is that for the cost of education and for one of the ticking things in the clock, in addition to our national debt, is about personal debt. And even though in the last 8 months the national debt has decreased and we've been able to deal with some of these issues, we are seeing personal debt, the largest impact of which has been student loan debt that has been tremendously increasing. It can be reduced if the student has an opportunity for a bridge strategy. And one of the bridge strategies can in fact be a company employed person who can go to school while they're employed and help to pay for their education so that they don't finish their education with a huge bill. So this is one of the things that we talked about in this particular meeting, and it was asked for by the Deputy Secretary Johnson to Governor Cook. And so that was the reason why I went to do the program. I went to a school district and talked to them about it, and they are looking at different schools who are interested in perfecting or refining what their curriculum can be so that we can look at other ways to reduce the stigma, because a lot of students have a stigma. There are students who are always in the academic track, other students who are in the vocational track, and so when there were students who were in that vocational track, people looked at those students and said, "Oh, you're in the vocational track, you can't do it." But now because we have an industry where students who have been in a vocational track can work for summers or work for companies where they are working for either production companies, or they're working at gas companies, or they're working at other companies that are in this industry, and they can make maybe 25, 35, 45, or maybe $60,000 a year, and they talk to their friends over the summer, and their friends say, I'm working at the mall, and their other friends say, well, I'm working and I'm making like $18 an hour, and then it's a different kind of a ballgame. So there's no more stigma. One person can go to a movie, but another person can go to a movie, buy the popcorn, buy the drink, and also have a car, and then have a new outfit. So I mean, there's all of those kinds of things that when you put it in that perspective, people can understand what that means. So, we sort of joke about it and we laugh about it, but this is what kids do. And so because our whole country is changing and we're looking at different ways of doing things, we have to think about that. And I asked my company to come up with all the list of different places of employment where people who are looking at these different tracks could be employed. And so these are ways in which we can now give them, and I gave them information to CCAC and to a couple of other schools in our area, because one of the parents who was there said, oh wow, so my child can actually have a job and then be able to utilize that company to assist them with their education costs, and that helps me as a parent who already has bills that I'm trying to pay, so that it doesn't mean that I'm left here with a lot of bills to have to pay while I still want to make sure that my child is getting an education. So then that child who started in that vocational track can go through that particular program, get a college education if that is what they choose to do, then be able to have the best of both worlds. They had that training in post-secondary, they had some introduction to it while they were in high school, and then they were able to go forward and do something else that they chose to do. So there are a lot of opportunities in this area so that they can.
Can I jump in?
Does that answer your question?
I want to get back to what I think you were asking. Up in Center County, the CPI, the Central Pennsylvania Institute, is just about ready to ribbon cut on their new Transportation Training Center, which has been built from the ground up to support natural gas. And CATA and CPI are partnering, and we expect that over the next few years we will have a partnership where they will be training, and we hopefully will be hiring, because we've had to grow our own. And now they've recognized that this is a terrific opportunity, and their goal is to be the preeminent source in central Pennsylvania for CNG and LNG technicians.
Doesn't Penn State have a program there with every new bus that comes on? You have a contract with the Department of Transportation or whatever it is. I know you have a test track out there, but I think because I've had the Chevy Volt with engineers driving around there, we had to watch the buses coming up. So Penn State does have a thing for every new bus that would come to market has to go through a test program up there. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
I never knew that till I went to Penn State. So.
Lanny Ross from the Altoona Technology Center is very aware of the facility that's gone up there. We've discussed that in the past. Who in here knows what an algorithm is? An algorithm is what makes natural gas work as a transportation fuel today. Because that's what makes a vehicle go from a fumigation system to an injection system. Where back in the day, when people's had all their trucks in the 80s and the guys were sitting there at the intersections turning the gas on because the thing would ping and whatever, you didn't know cylinder 1 was getting the same amount of gas as cylinder 8. But the algorithm, the electronic components to the conversion system that relates with the electronic control modules through the injection system is what makes natural gas work today, and is what makes it a viable transportation fuel because of the sophistication of the engines. And without that, none of this works. But natural gas itself is an excellent win-win for everybody. It's nice to get assistance from the state, but you don't have to mandate it. You don't have to regulate it. You don't have to, in reality, fund it. It's nice to get it started, but it's a win for everybody. So the person that sells it can make a little bit of money. The person that produces it can make a little bit of money. The person that uses it can save a little bit of money. So it's not something that you have to regulate somebody else out of business or mandate to make it work.
In a foreign oil situation, 74% of the cost that you pay at the pump is the cost of the foreign product, the foreign oil itself, the barrel of the oil. That doesn't go to us, either directly or indirectly. Whereas with compressed natural gas or LNG, less than 30% of the cost is the product. And of that, all of it's produced here.
That's what Tish was saying earlier. If natural gas would double in price, it'll equate only to about 30 cents on a gas gallon equivalent.
If it went up 20% tomorrow from $4 an MCF to $5 an MCF, that's 12 cents a pump. There is no other fuel that can guarantee you it won't go up 12 cents tomorrow, let alone hold the price for a year to 2 years.
As you can see, this is a very knowledgeable group. What other questions do you have?
I have one. You guys talked a lot about diesel and gas gallon equivalents. What's the mile per gallon like if you were to transfer, say, a Civic from gasoline or diesel?
There's no, on the light duty, there's nothing. On the heavy duty, maybe about a tenth, Bob. A tenth of a mile on the heavy duty.
And it's usually to the increase.
Increase.
Yeah. The common myth was, oh, your mileage is poorer, your performance goes down. Back in the days of carburetors, that might have been so. But our local gas is the equivalent of about 125 to 130 octane. It's like running high-test gasoline. So my Chevy pickup out there might get 14 miles to the gallon on gasoline. It's about 15 and a half on CNG. So I try to tell people to be conservative about it. Plus or minus 5% is what you might see on mileage, but there's no disadvantage, certainly.
There is a little bit less in propane, up there a little bit, and then the other thing is the flexi fuel. That there's some on it, and again, it's all how you drive and when you do it. But people should have learned, 3 or 4 years ago when they outlawed MTB. I mean, Sunoco has been using 10% ethanol in their fuel for probably 10 or 12 years. Well, all of them had to replace MTB, which was an additive to gasoline when it was outlawed, and that's what they added. They added ethanol. So every pump you go to now can contain up to 10% ethanol. Now they're looking at some of the ones even to go on to E15. But the problem is, ethanol is an alcohol, and so you got to make sure. I mean, it won't blow up your engine right now if you put 85 into your non-compatible engine. You might get a check engine light that would show because it does use more oxygen and stuff like that. But what happens is it's corrosive. If you would continually use it and you didn't have the right hoses and the right gaskets, then you would see all that. But all of these technologies moving on. Just remember.
What about LNG?
I got to tell you, I'm not as well there, but the reason LNG is really being looked at is in long haul, because you can put more energy and volume in a smaller space because of gas. When it's a liquid and it's under less pressure, you can keep that in a liquid for the same amount of energy can be put in a smaller space. If you look at compressed natural gas on the Class 8 tractors, they're pretty big or up behind. They're smaller in LNG because of that it being in a liquid state.
The engine doesn't know the difference between CNG and LNG because you turn it back into a vapor on an equivalent BTU basis before it goes into the engine.
You just form it. However, there is a pack car engine that does run the liquefied. It injects in liquefied and uses a 10% diesel emission. Actually, there's some company up in the northern tier that has those. I think the upfit on that was like $90,000, but he runs those trucks 21 hours a day. And that's the thing with liquefied is that you have to keep it chilled. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. Now I know Penn State's working with Norfolk Southern here using the locomotives, which I think is an excellent use of liquefied natural gas.
Actually, we're doing a project with a group of Clean Fuels, Clean Rivers, and we're doing a biofuel tugboat, and we're going to be using LNG on that. Trish is part of that group too. Our president kind of handles that because we have too much going on in my side. The other
The
side.
thing you have to remember about LNG, although it's an alternative fuel, it does have its place in long-haul trucking, in shipping, in rail, where you can store large quantities of it and handle it safely. But the biggest challenge it presents to me is how many people want to handle a minus 260-degree fuel every day on a regular basis. And if you use it in small quantities, it vaporizes a little more quickly. The big deterrent for me, I think LNG is 4 or 5 years away from being where CNG is now. But LNG is a fuel that has to be tanked in and trucked in from other states. It's not taking advantage of Pennsylvania resources right now.
We don't have any, we might have one or two plants in Pennsylvania, but
I wanted to just say that my vehicle runs well.
To get back to your very first question, our experience has been that natural gas doesn't have the same energy density as diesel, so we don't get quite as good fuel mileage. But over the years, the gap is getting closer.
I know Westport's representation on their 8.9 liter engine is that they compensate up to about 5% less on fuel efficiency. They represent that.
yeah, there is a little bit less, and there are, different, different information depending on who you talk to, but, it's real small though, it's not,
It's all about the driver.
yeah, sure it is, but it's the heavy duty too.
Anybody you talk to, it is all about the driver, how the driver, because your power curves are different too.
Right, but what about like engine and the BTUs are less per diesel? So I mean, that does contribute, correct?
And you have to look at it
Diesel's
from
what,
miles
138?
per gallon per person, or miles per gallon per 100 pounds of payload. You can say arguably that Tish's Honda Civic gets much more better mileage than my pickup, but I can carry a 5,000 pound payload. She can carry 3 people plus a driver. So if
That's
you take,
2,000 if I get it.
yeah. So
Well, I
it's
noticed
relative.
I noticed that it's a little after 2 here, and I think we still have one thing on the agenda.
Maggie, you notice how Maggie is really she's so ordered.
She's gotta get home.
This is great, we really appreciate that.
She's our facilitator.
Yeah.
Did anybody have any other questions?
Yeah. And I had a question for the gentlemen who are here who have driven the natural gas buses. I just wondered if you had a comment to share with the group.
That's you, Carl.
I love it. It's going from I drove diesel buses before to this, it's just sound quality. You can hear everything now. It's just great.
I just wanted to also add that for the Altoona Metro Transit Authority, that was the first dedicated natural gas transit bus in Pennsylvania. And I can say that because I worked on that project in 1990. It was a project co-funded by the Pennsylvania Energy Office. And a gentleman by the name of Phil Fry, who was the Transit Authority Executive Director at that time, worked on that project to facilitate making that possible. And we went to Hamilton, Ontario to look at buses and decide on all the different components for that. So it was really exciting to hear about the bus actually and what you're doing there in Trent. And I didn't really know about a lot of the additional things that were recently done until he was telling me about everything that was happening and about his friendship with Phil Fry. That really made me even more interested in everything that was happening. And I just salute all of you for everything that you're continuing to do with alternative fuels and the success that you're having with natural gas for your vehicles. But I'm all about accuracy and all about knowing what kind of real-world experiences you have. So for the benefit of all of our audience and participants, if there are ever any challenging and exciting things that you do learn and new experiences that you have, and I really enjoyed the slides that you had today, the things that you learned, the happy surprises, the experience of seeing what happened when the tank ruptured. Those kinds of things are the things that we need to let people know so that they can really understand. It is not a bomb. It is not something that is a scary thing that is on their vehicle, so that they can actually see and know that. And if there is any kind of a problem with the mileage, let's figure it out. Let's find out how we can make it improve, because that's what people want to be able to work with and want to be able to know what kinds of things we can do to improve it. And there are people here today and people here right now who can figure those kinds of things out. So we want to work together to make it possible. So thank you all very much.